Welcome to A Change of Heart podcast. I'm your host, Angel Walston. And in this space, we navigate life together. We ask the hard questions like, what is the truth you haven't told? But most importantly, we grow together. And sometimes that leads to a change of heart. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of A Change of Heart podcast. I'm super excited to discuss today's topic about the side effects of imposter syndrome. But before we get into that, I just want to take a moment to encourage you all to share this episode with a friend. And as you all know by now, we start each episode with a question of the day. So today's question is, what would your occupation be if you had followed your childhood dream? And as I was thinking about this, I realized I had a whole lot of dreams as a child. Like, I wanted to be a firefighter at one point. I do not know why. I wanted to be a dancer, a ballerina. But the one thing that I feel like was pretty consistent there for a while was I wanted to be a beautician. And I remember looking into Dudley Beauty School because that's where I was going to go. I was going to get my cosmetology license and I was going to have a salon and do hair. So I did not pursue that. But yeah, that was my childhood dream that I was going to have this salon. I'll be out here doing hair, probably doing makeup too. But yeah, I did not pursue it. So there's that. I also wanted to be a unicorn. So there's also that fun fact. So if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, let me know in the comments below. What would your occupation be if you had followed your childhood dream? And let me know if you actually followed it. Maybe you're actually doing it. And I'll also post it on my Insta stories at Angel C. Walston. I'll post the question so you can answer there as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's topic, the side effects of imposter syndrome. Doesn't that sound so deep? I feel like I first heard about imposter syndrome maybe like a year ago, maybe 2 years max. And I don't know how familiar everyone is with imposter syndrome, so I wanted to go ahead and define it. And according to Wikipedia, it's defined as a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So, in other words, it's like you're pretty much just waiting around for somebody to be like, oh my gosh, she really does not know what she's doing. She's not supposed to be here. And the reason for the question of the day, why I chose that one, is because I feel like when you think about kids, they have this mentality that they can do anything. They can be anything. Like if you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Some of them will be like, I want to be a dinosaur. And it's like, oh, okay. I mean, you can't, but they're like, no, yes, I can. I'm going to be a dinosaur. And I love that childlike faith that they have that they can do anything, they can be anything. And it's crazy how as we grow up, as we get older, as we become adults, it seems like we lose that feeling of I can be anything, I can do anything is possible within my reach, right? And I feel like somewhere along the way, we've allowed people, what's portrayed in the media, competition, comparison, social media, all of these different things to make us feel like we're not good enough, that we're inadequate. And then we start to doubt ourselves. We start to shrink. And then we start speaking to those doubts and fears saying, I can't do this. I don't belong here. I'm not cut out for this. I'm not qualified. And there's this feeling of waiting for the ball to drop where you're exposed that you really don't know what you're doing. Has anybody felt like that? If I can be honest, there have been moments where I felt like, how did I get here? These people think I know what I'm doing. I don't. So like people think like I have my life together. I don't. Some days I feel like I'm winging it. But it's like it's that feeling of how my name get on this? Who asked me to be here? Like I am not qualified to be in this position. And that's why I wanted to talk about the side effects of imposter syndrome because as a result of those thoughts, you can't even see how you've been successful. You can't see what you've accomplished. You can't see the things that you're doing well because that feeling of self-doubt and inadequacy, it trumps the feeling that you actually doing it. Like you're actually out here killing it. Like you are doing something that is making an impact, that is influencing, that is helping people, that is serving people, that is encouraging people. And we can lose sight of that because we get so into our head heads. We get so caught up in this cycle of self doubt and questioning and feeling like we're not good enough, that no matter what we do, no matter what we learn, it's never enough. So let's look at the 5 types of imposter syndrome. And let me say this, I don't know if there are more than 5 types. When I was looking at different articles about imposter syndrome, these were the 5 that I saw consistently. So that's what we're going to go with. And I want to talk about the side effects of it, because the reality is, whenever you are dealing with something, it has an impact on you. It has an impact on your mind, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of these different things. And as I was looking up the definition of a side effect, I'm a definition girl. A side effect is an unintended negative reaction to a medicine or a treatment. And when we're dealing and struggling with imposter syndrome, we don't even recognize sometimes the negative unintended reactions that we have to this mindset that we have taken on. So let's go ahead and jump into these 5 types of imposter syndrome. So I came across this article by Melody J. Wilding called The 5 Types of Imposter Syndrome. And the first one that was mentioned is the perfectionist. So we all know what the perfectionist is. It's the person who wants everything to be perfect. You want everything to be right. It's almost there, but not quite. You want it all to come together so seamlessly and so perfect. And it's just not realistic, y'all. We got to call a thing a thing. I was having a conversation with someone a few weeks ago, and we were talking about this idea of perfectionism and how perfectionism keeps you from actually ever executing anything, because you're so focused on everything that's not right. You get so consumed by everything that isn't in the right place. This could be tweaked, this could be fixed, that you never actually finish anything because you're so consumed with trying to make it perfect. And the reality is, it's never going to be good enough. And we get to a place where we allow perfectionism to keep us from doing anything or actually being successful, because we talk ourselves out of it because it's not good enough. Can I tell my truth? Can I be honest with myself? As I was working on doing this podcast, I recorded episodes, didn't like the quality of it, had an issue with something, and I was constantly going back, fixing, changing. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to put this off to the next year. We're going to do it in 2021 and everything will be good then. It'll give me more time to work on it. And it finally clicked like Angel. It's never going to be perfect. You'll always be able to find something that you don't like, something that you want to tweak, something that you want to fix. But at some point, you got to do it, because otherwise, you're just going to keep putting it off and it'll never be out because you'll feel like it's not good enough. And I had to get to a point where it's like, you know what? We're going to announce the podcast and it's not even finished. We're just going to go ahead and put it out there, because that's the only way that I can actually get started with it and actually get it out there, because I'm so consumed with trying to make it right and make it perfect. And it's never going to be good enough. It's never going to be perfect. There will always be something that can be tweaked. There will always be something that we want to fix, that we want to change. And when we're looking at this view of perfectionism, we feel as though we want to operate from a standard of excellence. But here's a question for us perfectionists. I'm including myself in it, so you're not alone. Is it truly a standard of excellence, or are you really self-sabotaging? Are you really trying to make things so perfect because you want it to be excellent? Or are you self sabotaging in the sense that you never actually do or commit to finishing something because you have allowed this standard of excellence to be something that is really unachievable? And what we fail to realize when we're struggling with this idea of perfectionism is that in trying to make things perfect, you're never satisfied. You're always dealing with this feeling of it's not enough. It's not good enough. It's always reiterating this feeling of lack, this feeling of unattainability. And you never take the time to acknowledge what's great about it. You don't take the time to acknowledge what you did well. And therefore, you never celebrate it. You don't celebrate the wins. You don't celebrate it because it's not finished. It's not perfect yet. I'll celebrate it when it's all done. But you never actually take a moment to sit and like, hey, I'm doing what I said I would do. It's not done. It's not exactly how I want it to be, but I'm doing it and I'm committed to making it the best that I can. But also be willing to acknowledge that sometimes what's the best that it can be may not be perfect, but it's still amazing. It's still great. And the other reality is, when we're dealing with imposter syndrome, we have a very skewed vision and version of what perfect is. Because somebody else could listen to it and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe you did that. And you're like, no, I should have done this, or it could have been like this, it could have been like that. And we never give ourselves a moment to say, hey, it's great. It's not just okay. It's not mediocre. It's not average. It's actually really good. And when we're dealing with perfectionism, we got to look at what the root of that is. Because some of us are trying to achieve this standard or this level to impress people because what we did was never good enough for our parents. It was never good enough on our jobs. It was never good enough at school, whatever it might be. And so we're constantly trying to make everything perfect so that we can be accepted. A side effect of perfectionism is you create this intense, immeasurable amount of pressure on yourself to create something that's already there. And you constantly are telling yourself that it's not good enough. And so that feeds into this feeling of inadequacy. It feeds into this feeling of doubt that it's not good enough. It's not going to be what you want it to be. You're never going to measure up because it's not what you thought it should look like or what you wanted it to look like. And now you have all of this anxiety. And it just creates this cycle that keeps going on. And in the midst of all of this, you have all of these amazing ideas. You have all of this great vision. You have all of this purpose, all of this potential, but it remains stuck and stagnant because you never actually fully finish anything or execute anything because you're so consumed with it being this perfect picture that doesn't exist. So, the next type of imposter syndrome is the superhero. And because this podcast is for my ladies, y'all know we got to make it a little bit more specific. Superwoman. Don't y'all feel attacked already like I did? The superwoman complex, and that is the feeling of inadequacy makes them push themselves to work harder in order to measure up. So there's this feeling I have to work harder, I have to do more, I have to be more, I have to push myself. And it's like, at the expense of what? I think a lot of times we carry this term of strength and strong as this badge of honor, but it's like, at the expense of what? And can we redefine the narrative of being strong? Can we redefine strength? Because I think that we have taken on this very unhealthy mentality that being strong means you push yourself until you are exhausted, until you are tired. You do everything, you be everything at the expense of yourself, your well-being, your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health. You carry the weight of everything and everyone. You fix everything and everyone. And it's all of this that you are carrying around. And once again, at the expense of what? And what we don't realize is this superhero, this superwoman complex that we carry around, it can create a validation addiction. Because what we do is we take on everything, we take on all this weight, all this pressure, and all of that for somebody to say, oh, look at you working hard. Look at you doing this. Look at you doing that. And we feed on this validation because it feels good for somebody to look at us as being strong. It feels good for someone to look at us and feel like, man, they don't take any days off. I remember there being a post that talked about how, I'm a grind, I'm a work now, I'll sleep later. Nah, I'm asleep now. Like, I'm going to sleep now. There's this mentality that we got to push, press, do all the time. Don't take no breaks, don't rest. But what if you could learn how to retrain and reframe the narrative that has been attached to being strong, to being superwoman? If you could learn how to give yourself permission to rest without judgment and without a reason, if you could unlearn the idea that you have to carry the pressure and weight of everything and everybody, if you could unlearn this narrative that you have to do everything, and we take on all of this to feel validated so that we feel like we're a part of something. The truth I hadn't told was that I wanted to feed into this narrative of being a strong Black woman, and I realized that that narrative did not work for me. And it wasn't so much that I'm not a strong Black woman, but I had to relearn and unlearn a lot of things attached with it. Because it's like, at the expense of what? Strength is not being burned out. Strength is not being stressed out. Strength is not carrying the weight of everybody around me to say that I'm a strong Black woman and I can do all things and I'm this and I'm that. I'm a strong Black woman even if I let that weight go. And the reality is this superwoman complex, the side effects of it is burnout. You stressed out. You're carrying more weight than you were ever meant to. You're trying to fix everything and everybody, and you're the one over here who is suffering as a result of that. And the funny thing is, with looking at this whole imposter syndrome of this fear of being exposed as a fraud, is that so many of us are walking around with this superwoman complex and we would love to lay it down. It's like, I don't want to have to carry all this weight. I don't want to have to carry all this pressure. I don't want to have to fix everything. Sometimes I want somebody to fix it for me. Sometimes I want somebody else to make the decisions. I want somebody else to push themselves harder. I don't want to have to be the one to always do it. But so many of us are even afraid to say that because we feel like that strips us of our superwoman complex. It strips us of our need to be needed. That's a whole nother episode in itself. And so if I don't carry my cape, if I take my cape off, then I lose my strength. Who said that? Who told us that? Who told us that strength was defined through carrying weight, being under pressure, being burned out, being stressed out, being worn out, being truth is I'm tired. Like, who told us that? Who told us that we have to continue to carry that? And the fraudulent part of the whole imposter syndrome attached to this is nobody else wants to say that I don't want to be superwoman. I want to be a woman and all that that entails. And that doesn't require me to be broken and burnt out and carrying all of this stuff just for the sake of me saying that I'm strong. So you're not a fraud because you feel that way. You're human. I'm still in a position where I am having to learn and unlearn this idea that I have to fix everybody's problems. I have to make everyone else's issues my issues. I have to figure this out for them. I have to carry this. I have to do this. I have to carry this pressure. I have to carry this weight. I don't. And you don't either. All right. The next type of imposter syndrome is the expert. And this is the person who tends to undermine their own expertise. So they're always trying to learn something. And there's nothing wrong with that. We should always be in a place where we are learning. There's always more to learn. But this type of person feels like they never know enough. When the reality is they're very intelligent, they're very skilled, they're very knowledgeable, but it's a constant feeling of it's never enough. So think about it like this. This is the person who may not apply for a job because they feel like they're not skilled enough. They feel like they don't meet every single qualification. So as a result of that, it's like, I'm not even going to bother applying because, I don't know enough. I wouldn't do well at this job because I don't know everything. But think about how many people who don't even meet the bare minimum, but will apply for a job and get it, be a supervisor. Like, and we might meet 7 out of 10 of the qualifications and not apply because it's not 10 out of 10. So we won't even update our resume. We won't even think about it. We won't even apply for the job. We have to be able to recognize and learn how to properly distinguish the difference between humility versus shrinking. And I'm going to do a whole episode talking about learning how not to shrink, how to take up space and still be humble, of course. But we have to learn the difference between humility versus shrinking because the reality is a lot of you are hiding behind humility. God calls us to be humble. I'm here for humble, okay? But you are hiding behind humility. And it's not just a matter of you being humble, you feel inadequate. And it may even be a thing that you struggle with confidence. It's very easy to hide behind this idea of humility and say, I'm humble and I don't want to talk about, what I've done, what I've accomplished. I commend that. But we also have to be able to acknowledge when we are using humility as a crutch, where we're using humility to hide the fact that we're not confident, that we struggle with taking up space, that we struggle with really acknowledging who we are and really standing in that truth and really allowing ourselves to be bold and to be confident in who it is that we are. The other thing when we're thinking about this expert is it's a form of procrastination. So with the expert feeling like, they don't know enough, they're not good enough, like the constant feeling of it's never enough, you get to a place where you constantly procrastinate because you feel like you don't meet the qualifications. You don't meet whatever is required. You feel like what you have to offer is not enough, so you keep putting it off. Can I be honest? Can I tell the truth? Tell the truth and shame the devil? One of the things that I have had to be honest about, the second truth I had not told, was that I am one of those people who struggles with procrastination. And for the longest of times, I thought that my issue with procrastination was due to a lack of discipline. It's not, it's due to avoidance. I avoid things that I don't want to deal with. And so, what I do is I will put it off. So, if it's something that I feel like may cause a conflict, or if it's something that I feel like I'm going to be asked questions that I don't know the answers to, or if I feel like I'm not going to be able to give the response that I think I should, I will put it off and I will put it off and I will put it off. And what you have to understand is that procrastination is also another form of keeping you from actually executing and doing the things that you could or should be doing. And when we look at this whole expert mentality, the side effects of that is low self esteem, this skewed vision of who you are and what you are capable of doing because you keep focusing on what you have to offer is not enough. You don't know enough, you'll never measure up. And it's like you're constantly wanting to learn more, not just for the sake of learning more, but to get to a place to feel like you actually measure up, that you're actually at a point where you've reached this level of expertise that really is unattainable. And the reason why I say it's unattainable is because while you are here on this earth, you should always be learning. You're never going to know everything. There's always going to be room for you to grow. There's always going to be room for you to learn. And that's a beautiful thing. That is the beautiful thing about life is that we're forever learning. We're forever growing. Even things that you learned previously, you might change what you think about it. And that's okay. But we have to get to a space where we feel as though the need to forever be learning, to always be learning, that is not a negative. It is a thing that comes with growth. It's a thing that comes with life. And as you are learning, that's what helps your area of expertise. It doesn't mean that you are lacking anything. It simply means that there is room for you to grow. Moving on to the fourth type of the imposter syndrome is the natural genius. And so this is the person who feels as though something should come with ease or success the first time they do it. So it's similar to the perfectionist in the sense that there's an expectation of this standard being met, but you want to meet it the first time, the first attempt. And if you don't catch it immediately or with ease, then you feel like you failed. So there's this feeling of like, why can't I get this? Why is this hard for me? And it's hard for people who are used to doing well. This is something that it becomes a challenge for them because when you're faced with a challenge that you can't get past easily, then you feel like something is wrong with you. You'll have those thoughts of like, no, I'm dumb or I'm stupid. Why can't I get this? Why is it coming so easy for someone else, but it's challenging for me? And some things are just going to require more work. It's going to require more patience. It's going to require you to put in more work than you have ever had to before. And that's also something that helps you to grow. It stretches you. But when you're thinking about this natural genius mentality, a lot of times it's the people who a lot of things have come easy to them. And so when you're faced with a challenge, when you're faced with something that is like, I should be able to do this and you can't, it's like, hold up now. What's really going on? Because I'm usually good at things. I'm usually the one who gets it right. I'm usually the one who gets good grades. And if I can tell the truth, I remember being in high school and the high school that I went to, it wasn't a horrible school. It was not one of the top schools by any means either, but it was very easy for me. I was one of the students who I didn't really have to study for tests. I didn't have to put a whole lot of work in. I could do things the night before and still get A's. I did not have to put in a lot of work. So once I graduated from high school and went to college at James Madison University, go Dukes, y'all, your girl struggled. And when I say struggled, I mean struggled to the point my first semester, I was almost on academic probation. I was so used to how high school was that I didn't have to do the work, okay? Let's call the thing the thing. I did the bare minimum and it wasn't just about getting by. I got A's. Like I literally did not have to put the work in and I graduated top of my class in high school, but college was a whole different playing field. I had to actually put in work. I had to study. I had to show up. I had to actually pay attention. And that was a challenge for me because it was like, how am I failing my classes when I was getting A's just 6 months ago? Like, what is really going on? But with that natural genius, like when you're in a space where things come natural to you, it comes easy to you. You don't have to put in a lot of work for it. When you're faced with something that challenges that, and when you're in a position where it's like, oh, I actually don't know how to do this, or I'm not sure how to figure this out, it can become a struggle for you because you never really had to work this hard. You never had to put in that much effort. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you can't do this or that you're not cut out for it. It's something new. It's a challenge. It's going to require you to do something or to think in a way that you haven't before. And the funny thing is, the side effect of the natural genius is that you're constantly questioning your ability. And it creates this never mentality over something that is a challenge. And what I mean by that is, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm never going to be able to get into that school. I'm never going to be able to pass that test. I'm never going to be able to get that kind of job because it's a challenge, because it's something that you struggle with. And as a result of that, the other side effects are a lack of confidence, and you become avoidant of certain things because it's hard. So then you start talking yourself out of doing something that you know you want to do. You know that you're called to do it, but you talk yourself out of it because it's hard. And we tend to run from the hard things. And with this whole idea of the imposter syndrome, we feel as though we're not good enough or we're not cut out for it because it's hard. Some of the things that are hard, that are uncomfortable, that challenge you are the very things that grow you, that mature you, that stretch you, that get you to the place that you actually want to be in. And it requires you sometimes to do things that you've never done before, like ask for help. And a lot of us don't like doing that, which leads me to the last type of imposter syndrome, which is the soloist. And I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all know right now, it stepped on all of my toes, including the pinky. The soloists are the people who tend to be very individualistic and prefer to work alone. Their self worth often stems from their productivity, so they tend to not like to ask for assistance or help because they tend to view asking for help as a sign of weakness or incompetence. Listen, this goes beyond being independent, okay? This is beyond you being a strong, independent woman. This is to a place of you wanting validation and I did it. I made it happen. And then when it doesn't work out, that same weight of I did it, I made it happen also falls on you of I failed, I messed up. And you carry the weight of that. You don't want to ask for help. You have this mentality, I'd rather do it myself. Y'all already know this. I'd rather do it myself because if I do it myself, I know it's going to be done right. But it's like, what are you really trying to prove? Your self worth, your value? To say, I can do it all, I can do everything? Okay, and now what? Now what? How is your worth, your value, productivity, competent, all those things? How is that diminished or lessened by not carrying the load of everything and doing everything by yourself? Here's the thing, y'all. We were never created to do life alone. And I struggle with this at times. I really do struggle with this at times. But we were never created to do life alone. And we tend to become so individualistic and so self focused that we don't even realize how we put ourselves in a position to miss out on having really solid relationships with people who can help us, that we can learn from, who can also learn from us. And we have to get to a place where we learn how to ask for help the first time, not just when it gets to the point where you feel overwhelmed or things become too much. Like before it even gets there, let me delegate this. Let me create a team. Let me ask for help. Let me get someone to help me with this. Because the side effects of the soloist mentality, once again, is burnout, self validation, and pride. So, like with the expert, how they hide behind humility, the soloist, you can become very prideful in what you do, what you've accomplished, what you made happen. And y'all know, as a believer, we can get to a space where we even start to take all of what we have done and make it about us and act as though God didn't contribute to any of it. And we create this mentality that we have to do everything ourselves. Like we cannot ask for help. Like asking for help is beneath us. Why? Why do you have to do everything by yourself? How is it benefiting you? to carry all of that by yourself? These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves because a lot of times in theory, it seems good. I know what I like. I know what I want. I know how it's going to turn out. I know what it's going to be. I know what it's not going to be. So I'm just going to do it. And we just carry around so much for no reason. And we don't even know why. We just carrying it. Burned out, tired, stressed out, prideful, like all of these different things just for the sake to say that I did it. Once again, okay, and now what, sis? You did it at the expense of what? All right, so now that we have discussed the 5 different types of imposter syndrome, let's talk about how do we overcome this? How do we combat imposter syndrome? One of the most important things is being able to have conversations with people who you trust about what you are thinking, what you are feeling, how you are processing things. Because a lot of times we don't see ourselves in the way that other people see us, and vice versa. People don't see us in the way that we think that they do. And I was having a conversation with a girlfriend of mine a few weeks ago, and I was talking to her about a specific situation where I was feeling inadequate and struggling with kind of not really knowing where I fit in a situation. And her response was, I'm actually really surprised to hear that because I never would have looked at you and thought that you felt that way. And the interesting thing is, as you are having those conversations with people who you can be honest with, that you can be vulnerable with, it helps you to be able to see sometimes the holes in how you perceive things. And it also helps you to be able to see that sometimes how you perceive things is not really rooted in reality. It's not always as factual as you may think that it is or as it appears to be based off of how you are looking at it. So when you're able to have those conversations with someone, it helps to give language to what you think and what you feel. And it helps to be able to give a different perspective on it. Because a lot of times when we feel a certain way, we are so convinced that it's valid. We are so convinced that it is truth. We are so convinced that how we view it is the only way for it to be viewed. But when you have someone who you can speak to about these things and say, hey, actually, no, I don't see it like that, or I don't necessarily agree with that, and be open to receive, be open to receive it. It helps you to be able to let go of some of these mindsets that you have that really aren't the healthiest. Another thing that is important in overcoming imposter syndrome is being able to ask yourself, why do you think the way that you do? Who told you that? Why do you have this idea? What is that rooted in? And really going back to what I said earlier, really asking yourself, is this belief rooted in reality? Not to say that what you think is not real, because to you it is. But the question is it rooted in reality? Because I can believe something, but it may not be rooted in reality. It may not actually be as I perceive it to be. And that goes back to being able to have conversations with people who you trust, who can see things that you may not see, or see things as you see and help you to be able to process it. But ask yourself the questions, why do I feel this way? Why do I think this way? What has formed my beliefs? What makes me think the way that I do? What in my past, what from my childhood, what are these things that have truly formed my perceptions, my thoughts, my perspectives about the way that I view myself? Another thing that helps is redefining the narrative associated with failure. I was reading this article and there was a quote from Henry Ford that says, failure is only the opportunity to begin again more intelligently. I love that. I feel like that's so perfect because I feel like failure is just associated with a negative connotation. And we feel like when we fail, that it's just like the end of the world, it's the end all be all. But you learn from failure. You grow from failure. You learn what to do. You learn what not to do. And even in the midst of failure, we have to acknowledge that something did work. There was some part of it that did work. We didn't completely fail. There was something that we learned. It was something that helped us to be able to try again, to take another look at it, to look at it in a different way. So, as we redefine the narrative associated with failure, we also redefine how we perceive failure, how we respond to failure, how we handle failure, how we view it, and how we're able to grow from it and how we're able to bounce back from it. Another thing that helps is learning how to celebrate your moments, no matter how small they appear to you, no matter how big they may appear to others. Celebrate the moments. I think that we can get so used to being in this high achieving mode that we jump from thing to thing. We jump from vision to vision. We jump from execution to starting the next thing. And we never take a moment to acknowledge, like, wow, I did that. I accomplished something. I did something I said that I was going to do. It's so important to learn how to take a moment just to say, hey, I did that. And I think that sometimes we get so used to just going on to the next thing that we really do minimize and overlook what we have accomplished. What have you done that you're proud of? What have you done that has really helped you to get to where you are now? What are the stepping stones, the blocks that have been laid that have helped you to become who you currently are, even though you're still on your way to getting to where you want to be? I think a lot of times we get so far in our head about the fact that we're not yet where we want to be that we don't take a moment to acknowledge, but you also are not where you started at. You really have grown. You really have matured. You really have put in the work to become the woman that you've always wanted to be. And no, maybe you're not there yet, but you are working on it. There is progress being made. And we are all works in progress, okay? Ain't nobody arrived. I don't care what anybody try to convince you. I don't care what they look like on Instagram. Nobody has arrived. We are all in this process and we have to learn. I'm going to keep saying it. I said it in the last episode. I'm going to keep saying it. We have to learn how to give ourselves grace in the middle, how to give ourselves grace in the process and acknowledge the work that has been put in, even as we are still on this journey to becoming. And that's okay. So I hope that you all have been encouraged by this. I hope that as you were listening, that maybe you heard yourself in one of the types of imposter syndrome. You was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. I didn't know it was me. I didn't know I was messed up. I didn't know I had these issues. It's okay. We are all a work in progress. This is just something to start to get you thinking about how you view yourself, how you view success, your failures, all of these different things. And also to let you know, we all got stuff. We're all working on things. We're all works in progress. And you can do this. You can become who you've always wanted to become. And don't allow imposter syndrome or the side effects of it to keep you from going forward, to keep you from pushing forward, because you're amazing and you deserve all the amazing things that God has for you. So that's all I have for you this week. If you listen to something and you're like, you know what? Girlfriend needs to hear this. Make sure that you share, send it to your girlfriend because sharing is caring. And I hope that you all have an amazing week and I will talk to you all next Thursday. Bye guys. Thank you so much for tuning into a Change of Heart podcast. I hope that you were encouraged and please take a moment to share with a girlfriend and don't forget to download the episode. Last but not least, I would love to connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram at Angel C. Walston and Facebook and YouTube at Angel Walston. Have a great week.